What's up guys, Husto7, and today I've got a video for Fictorum. I'm going to be giving you a rundown about what you need to know for the runes, and giving you some tips about them as well. The first thing that I want to point out about the runes is that there's 4 different rarities for them. The basic rarity is indicated by the white background, magical rarity is indicated by a blue background, rare rarity indicated by a purple background, and finally the unique rarity indicated by a gold background. This means that the stats can have pretty different changes based on their rarity. If we take a look at the basic rune here, you can see that the stat changes is 9% additional mana and 100/100 on impact and splash. But if we go to the unique rune, we're looking at 36% additional mana and 296 and 263 impact and splash, meaning that this rune is going to be much more powerful to my spells than running with a basic rune. So even if you have 2 runes that look like they might be the same, you always want to double check that you're using the most powerful rune possible, as long as you're not going to be draining your mana too fast, because there is an increased mana cost if you put on a more effective rune. So make sure that you're getting the right gear and leveling up your stats by the passive bonuses in order to keep up, but you want to try to make sure that you are using the most effective rune possible. Another thing to point out about runes is that you can upgrade them through the enchanting window. Let's go ahead and take this rune first. Like we showed at the beginning, the stats is 9, was 9, 100, 100. Now if we upgrade it, it will go to 9, 110, 110. It's going to cost some essence each time, which we have plenty of to do right now. And like the other items in the game, it can be upgraded 3 times, making this rune more effective. Now we're at 9, 130, 130 on the basic, but you'll notice that we're still not even all the way up to a level 1 magical rune. So this makes it kind of a trade-off. Do you want to spend the essence upgrading your less rare runes, or do you want to try to hold out to get the greater rarity? If you get a unique rune, you'd probably definitely want to upgrade it if you have the essence, since that's going to be the most powerful rune that you can get in terms of rarity and stat distributions. The next thing that's important to know about runes is that they come in each of the 3 different element types, as well as one that's allowed to be used with all of the element types. Lodic runes can only be used with lightning elements. Volcanic runes can only be used with fire element. Glacial rune can only be used with the ice element. And the white Zorric rune can be used with all. So in my opinion, this makes Zorric runes the most powerful because they can be used across any of your spells. You don't have to mix up your build or change any of diversity. You can spec completely into one element, or you can spec into all of the elements, and your runes will be able to be consistent through all of your different spells. However, if you're using some of these bound runes, you may want to spec into a particular type of spell. If you've been watching my live streams, you know that I've been playing as the Firebrand and was spec'd entirely into fire, so I was keeping my eyes open for these volcanic runes, but when I would get some unique glacial runes, it was a trade-off. Do I want to switch because I've got the high rune into some more ice spells, or do I want to stay as my fire spells because I have better upgraded spells but I have weaker runes? So that's the trade-off. You have to decide which is more important to you. But keeping that in mind, I recommend trying to keep your eyes peeled for as many Zorric runes as you can, because they're going to be the most helpful because they can be used across all of the different spell types. A quick thing that's important to know about runes is that you get a small version of their passive bonus in all of your spells, even if you don't shape into them. So if you put a multi-shot rune on, when you start throwing fireballs, you'll start throwing 2, even if you're not shaping into that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is briefly take you through all of the runes so you get an idea of how they will work and how you can partner them well with spells. The first rune is Concentrate, and basically this is just going to give it more damage. You can see that at the expense of 9% additional mana, you can increase the impact and splash damage. Impact damage is when you hit someone, the splash damage is what's left behind on the radius when the spell hits. So this rune basically is just making your spells more powerful by a little amount. Multi-Shot adds additional projectiles to projectile-based spells. So if you're Glacial Spike, or if you're using Fireball, anything that you actually throw as a projectile spell will get a bonus at the expense of additional mana cost. Persist makes it so that enemies actually take greater damage over time. I like to pair this rune well with Manifest, since it leaves behind the damage over time effect on the ground, but you can see here that it increases both the time and the damage that enemies will take when they are affected by particular like burns. High Explosive is going to increase the blast radius, so the circle that you see when you're casting a spell will actually get bigger, meaning that you'll do more splash damage and you'll hit more enemies in a larger area. Pierce makes it so that your projectile will keep going through enemies and hit more in a line. This is great if you can line enemies up and you can hit them with multiple different projectiles. I like to use this with a spell like Plasma or Glacial Spike because you can line the enemies up and hit all of them. You also get the increased impact damage, as well as with higher runes you can go through more enemies. High velocity is going to increase the projectile speed, so this is going to make your spells actually get to the target quicker. I like to use this on mages that have a blink or a leap ability because you can hit them and the projectile that you're throwing at them will go quicker, meaning that you have a more likelihood of hitting them. Magic Grease increases the spell's range, but a quick note is that it also increases the spell's speed. At first, I was ignoring Magic's Reach on a spell like Meteor, but it was pointed out to me by one of the devs that this actually increases the speed as well. So if you put this spell on a Meteor, it effectively makes your Meteor an instant cast, which can be very powerful. So don't overlook this rune. It doesn't just give a range bonus, it also gives a speed bonus. So like High Velocity, it's important to have along with any spells that you want to cast quicker. Slow is pretty straightforward. It's going to slow enemies. It works well with AoEs since you can slow a lot of enemies come at you. It's going to be able to, if they're coming at you, you can slow them down and hit them with Pierce, so it pairs well with things like that, or Manifest, so you can slow them down while they're in a dot. It pairs well with a lot of different runes, but basically it's just going to slow down the effective movement speed of the enemy. Stun is pretty similar to slow, but rather than just slow them down, it's actually going to hold them in place. It pairs well with all of the similar runes, and it's nice to stun an enemy in place and then drop a slower cast like a Meteor or a Chain Lightning on. Chain Reaction is going to cause your spells to leap to nearby enemies. Again, great with spells like Lightning, or even good with things like Plasma. I've seen where you can throw some Plasma balls that can hit the enemy, and when you have a unique rune partnered with a Plasma, it can start hitting basically all of the enemies in an area and do a significant amount of damage. So it's a great rune to keep in mind when you're looking at some more powerful spells. Spread is going to cause the projectiles to go in a wider area, so it's nice for things that you'll throw, but if you notice, it doesn't just have to be used with projectiles, so you can also use Spread for things like the Cone of Cold or the Flamethrower to give a wider radius hitting in. Manifest will leave behind part of the spell element on the ground that enemies can walk through. So if you cast a Meteor, the ground will start burning. If you use a Glacial Spike, you'll be able to have a little area of frost on the ground that will hurt the enemies as they walk through it. Again, it pairs well with a lot of different elements, and it's great to put on the ground and have the enemies get stunned or slowed in so that they take increased damage as they're walking up to you. Seek has got to be one of my favorite runes in the game. It can only be used on projectile spells and will make it so that the projectile actually will seek out nearby targets. It is great with basically all spells, but I particularly like it with the Plasma Ball since you can throw those from really far away and they'll just kind of be an impending ball of doom that moves slowly towards the enemy. They're also really nice because they can seek out the towers, so if you throw them and you're just looking at a tower from a long way away, you can have the Plasma Ball or whatever spell you're using actually seek out that tower to open up the Nexus. Efficiency is a unique rune because it doesn't actually add any bonuses, it just reduces the overall mana cost. While most runes increase the mana cost of a spell, this one does the opposite and decreases it. I like to partner it with high mana cost spells like Meteor or like the Chain Lightning, anything that is going to require a lot of mana because you can get that bonus by reducing it. But it's sometimes overlooked. It is nice though if you are speccing more into health or into speed. Casting speed can drain your mana pretty quick, so having an efficiency rune on can be helpful. Nova is going to convert your spell into a greater area of effect. So it can only be used on area spells like Flame Strike or like Frost Nova, even it's got Nova in the title. It is just going to make a smaller range, a pretty significant range decrease. You see you got a minus 1000% range bonus. So keep that in mind. Your spells are basically only going to be able to cast right around your area, but they are going to do a greater splash and greater radius, so they'll affect more targets. It's nice to use on things like Flame Strike that you can just throw on your feet and hit a lot of enemies. Echo repeats the spell you just casted after a short delay. It can be great with a spell like Incendium that you can throw on an enemy, wait a few seconds, and then they'll get hit again. If you throw on a Meteor, it will throw down a second Meteor in just a few seconds. Basically just echoes whatever spell you just used in the same area. And the last one has got to be another one of my favorites, Trap. It can only be used on area spells since you can't trap a projectile. You throw and you'll get a debuff on the ground that when an enemy walks through or over, I should specify it doesn't have to be on the ground. You can throw traps above or on the walls of buildings, and when an enemy walks near them, it'll activate, causing the Flame Strike, whatever area spell you're using, to activate and to hurt the enemies that walk through. So there you have it. There's a quick rundown of all the different runes in this game and how they work. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to stay up to date on all of my Fictorum content. I've been live streaming this game on Twitch, and I'll have a review coming out on August 8th. Thanks a lot for watching.